So you enjoying yourself so far? Yes? Everyone enjoying themselves? I'd like to put everything we just did this morning into context, just kind of see, so you can see how these things like add up on each other. I think about a month or so ago, I was on a set of flights. I was going to Thailand this time. And you may as well sit down. We can add a few more things after this. Are we all ready? Then let us begin. Once upon a time, there was a weary traveler flying through business class. The problem was he wasn't allowed to check in on time. Why? Because he arrived at the airport far too early, and he was being reasonable, said no problem. Instead of waiting in the lovely, delightful, relaxing business lounge, I will wait in the restaurant upstairs to make your life easier. And off he goes. Several hours later, he comes back and wants to check in. This time, they can't check him in. Why? Well, because the business credit card on which he was checked wasn't there. In other words, he had to wait for his business partner to turn up. And basically, Cliff had the business credit card, and they refused to check people in without the credit card on which the whole thing was booked, which is really ironic, given that I have a passport, which is probably a bit more of a serious document reflecting who I am. So that's where the whole saga starts beginning. They can't check me in because they don't have the credit card, their passport's not enough, and so on. So I have the check-in girl in front of me. I pretty much realized it's not up to her whether or not she can check me in. I ask her, look, is there anything you can do? Can you check me in manual because the system won't let you? Well, I don't know, I'm not sure I'm allowed to do that. So I know there is a possibility, it's just she hasn't got the authority. Do you hear that? So I said, okay, I understand, don't worry. So who can help me? One of the customer managers. He'll be down in 10 minutes. No worries, I'll just wait here. So I'm being very reasonable, very calm, building my ammunition. And eventually the customer service manager comes down, I talk to him, and he goes, oh, I can't help, I'm afraid. So he sends me off to the customer services desk. You can see the chain beginning to happen, right? And I speak to an older gentleman there who's probably in charge, but refuses to acknowledge it. So I think this is interesting, fine. He can't do it, he sends me right back to the customer service manager again. So I'm now a full buck in return, right? So I come back to him, and he says, oh, you have to go so-and-so. I said, well, he just sent me back to you. I guess you're in charge, right? What have I just done? Gave him the authority. I labeled it, right? At this point, he's a little overloaded. He feels the pressure, and honestly, he's not the best customer service representative. He doesn't really know how to deal with people. What does he do? He shuts down and walks off. Right? Shocking. My ammunition is building. So I'm thinking, oh, this is interesting. At this point, of course, I'm not the happiest of campers. So I go back to the customer services desk, and I talk to another, I grab him again. This time, I'm now going to force responsibility. Say, okay, I'd like to have a copy of complaint procedure, and how do I spell your name again? It forces responsibility, doesn't it? So, of course, he has to comply. I get all the details. So there's already some pressure building in the system, right? So I'm hanging around again, and eventually I get to speak to another customer services rep at the main desk. Not him. He's present, but he's not there. And I explain the whole thing again and say, look, is there anyone else that can help you who's got the authority to do this? Because essentially, their problem is the person without the credit card can't check in. I think they have issues about whether or not the person's paid for it, which is weird because it's their bank, they should know, right? So they have bad systems in place. So I'm being very reasonable, saying, look, I came here like 5 hours ago, I waited for 3 hours to be able to check in, and it's fine, it's no problem because they couldn't take my bag, and instead of being in the nice, comfortable business lounge that I did pay for, I had to sit upstairs in the little dingy restaurant, and that's not a big deal. And then I had to wait for the manager, and the manager sent me here, and they sent me back, and the other. What would you do if you were in my shoes? She's kind of like, pressure's building. She didn't know how to respond. I don't think she had the authority to actually do anything there. She doesn't know how to respond. She said, I'm sorry, I can't do anything with this. I can't check you in because I have to. The system requires a manager, the credit card. So you're going back to the excuse, which is, of course, the credit card. Says, look, what's the issue here? Is it that you need to know who I am? Or is it that you're not sure if the whole thing's been paid for? right? Because if you need to know who I am, it's very simple. Here's my passport. That's pretty much, if the US government will let me into the country with this thing, I think they have a slightly higher security protocol than you do, right? This is me. Secondly, I've flown with you lots of times before. Look at your records. Here's my, frequent flyer card and so on. You can check me out, right? You know that it's me, because I think the first excuse was, we've got to make sure that this is the actual traveler that's bought the ticket. He said, look, you can check me out. You have all the things there. Am I being reasonable? Yes. Who's now being unreasonable? Right? How? Because I've broken their frame and said, we need to identify the passenger. Well, here's my identity. Here's another identity. Here's another identity. Check your system, you have even more identity. Then, of course, the real objection comes out, the one they can't tell the public, which is they're not sure, they have to be sure that they've paid for the flight, which is basically means that they have bad credit control systems, because they should know as soon as they've taken the payment, right? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So, the thing about issue of the payment comes out as, oh, is that all? Well, here's my credit card. Feel free to take the details. And if my business partner doesn't turn up with a credit card, just bill that. So say, oh, I don't know, what do you have to do is we'll have to charge the card for the full amount and then refund it afterwards. I said, fine, no worries. But, this is important, of course, will you refund it to me as soon as my partner gets here? He says, oh, no. You'll have to come back on your return flight, which, of course, is next year. So, at this point, the next tactic starts coming in. It's called anger. Notice, though, it's not just random anger. It's not just frothing at the mouth. This is kind of a justified anger. So saying, look, I've been here, you've messed me about, you've sent me around this place, I've been nothing but reasonable, I showed you my ID, I'm even willing to pay for the flight again. All you have to do is promise me you will refund it on the spot. I mean, hotels can do it, anyone can do it, it's just reversing the transaction like that. You can't have my money for a whole year. That's just outrageous, right? Now, of course, the pressure is really built. She doesn't know what to do with it. What does she do? She disappears in the back room. I wait patiently. Out comes the original gentleman I spoke to. He is the manager, shielded by all these little, soldier and stuff, supposed to take the flak and die for him. So now they can't take any more, so it's up to him. But of course, the pressure's already built. My ammunition dump is just ready to fire because they've given me lots and lots of things to, present. So I run through the whole spiel again. And now I'm being very, very reasonable again. I'm very calm. At the end of which I let a little bit of anger, a little bit of frustration creep in and say, look, you can tell why I'm kind of frustrated about this, right? Now tell me, I've bought a business class ticket. What's the point of buying a business class ticket if all I'm going to get is treated like, if I'm going to be treated poorly? Isn't the whole point that I have a smooth, elegant flight so that I don't have to get stressed about the whole thing? You can see where I'm coming from, don't you? How would you feel if you're in my shoes? Pressure's building, pressure's building. What can I do to get into the lounge now? All I want to do is be able to relax in the lounge, get some work done, and when my business partner comes, it'll be fine. Or we have to wait for him to turn up. He's not turning up till the last minute, so I can't wait out here all this time. Think about it. So the pressure's building some more. And then I run him through the whole thing again. Look, here's my identity cards, here's my thing, look on the system. He starts typing out the numbers and sees I've taken other flights before. I've offered to give you my credit card so you can take payment. You must return the payment as soon as you get what you want, which is you see the credit card on which it's been taken. You cannot keep that money for a year. It's only reasonable, right? Pressure's building, pressure's building. What can you do? And it's building again. Oh, I can't do it. So what do I do? The next tactic is you just cycle. Look, I've been here for 5 hours. I've talked to so-and-so. They moved me so-and-so. Then this happened, then that happened. I've given you my ID. I've given you my Visa card. I've given you this. What else could I do? Think about it. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? There's got to be, what else is there? Eventually, it's cracking. I'm wondering, will he run away as well? And then he does something very interesting. He looks up and says, do you promise that your business partner will turn up with a credit card? Right? Now, he doesn't need the promise. If I'd promised him beforehand, would it have made any effect? No. He needs the promise to justify to himself why he's going to break the system or ignore the normal rules. Make sense? Yeah. As soon as I heard that, of course I do, right? And you know what? If he doesn't show up, you know exactly where I am. Here's my credit card. You'll be able to take the payment, no problem at all. I'll just give him an extra justification for allowing me to check in. Tap, 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 tap. Here you go, sir. Here's for your bags. Have a nice flight. Now notice, it took a fair amount of effort to get to that point, right? Now, to be honest with you, at this point, I was kind of an interesting place because I thought either I spend the next 3 hours arguing with these people and that'll be kind of enjoyable, or I get on the flight, right? Either way, I kind of win. Now the point is, though, can you see how there's a system, and the systems, by the way, they do not normally break the system that they've got, the protocol. Thank you, that's what I'm looking for. They normally do not break protocol. I know this because it's happened to me before, and it's pretty much systematic. And this time, I had time to spare. So I thought I might as well go for it, right? The key thing here is, how do you build the internal pressure? Because what does the pressure do to the critical factor in particular, right? Exactly. Eventually, the critical factor is moved to one side. The amygdala is enough stimulation that they can't think through all thought loops. All their excuses have been destroyed because I've counted every single one. They have nothing left. And one of the most powerful words in the English language, and if translated in a lot of other languages too, is the word because. If you cannot rationalize something, it's very difficult to maintain the behavior. Does that make sense? He could no longer rationalize the protocol. That's why eventually I had to go through with it. But notice how there's a lot of pressure that has to be built up to get into that point. Does that make sense to you guys?